All right, so let's get started. My name is Chuck. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started doing internet stuff in '96. I haven't had a real job since college, so I'm just kind of a serial entrepreneur. Stumbled into buying and selling websites because I was making a bunch of money online and didn't know what to do with it. And I looked at like franchises and real estate and all that other stuff, and everything just kept drawing me back to the internet because like that's what I know how to do. Can somebody ask me to shut that door? It's really hard to. So if you're thinking about buying and selling websites, you need to ask yourself a couple questions. Why am I buying and selling websites is the first question you should ask. How much is my time worth? Do I want a job or an investment? What kind of return on my capital do I need? What size deal makes sense? What kind of risk level or risk does the site have? And what are my plans for the site? So know why you're buying and selling websites, right? Are you looking for cash flow, or are you just looking to make, I need $5,000 a month to support my lifestyle? Are you looking for asset appreciation? Do you see something that you want to buy and try to build it up real quick and not worry about the cash flow, but worry about more so the exit? Is there a synergy? Do you own a guitar site and you see somebody selling a guitar pick and guitar string site, and you figure if you can pull them together, you can grab their list and, kind of cross-sell? Is there synergies? Untapped potential. When I buy sites, I'm always looking for untapped potential. The best site to buy is a site that when you look at it, you say, that site's making that? Right? And it's like, how is that possible? Because then you think about it and you're like, wow, if they're making that kind of money with that site, like what can I do to really, improve the amount of money it's making? And then the last one would be like making some blog networks. So if you have a site, maybe you buy some cheap sites and you use them to point to yourself to try to help you to rank a little better. So know your reasons for selling, right? You're just looking to cash out. You want to go buy a boat or a house or something. Are you looking to redeploy your capital? So maybe you see something with some potential. All of your capital is tied up in the current business you own. You want to get out of that and throw it into something else that you think you could increase the value in. Do you see a declining market? You want to focus back on your core business. I've gotten into this where I go out and buy all these websites. And then instead of focusing on what really makes me money, now I'm like, spending time here and spending time there and spending time there, and it hurts overall rather than helping because I'm doing too much stuff. I think the number one reason most people sell is they're just bored. Like when you're grinding through a website for years and years and years, at a certain point it's just a grind and it's not fun. We're all entrepreneurs, right? And we want exciting new things to try and to challenge ourselves. So one of the more important things you got to think about is, what is my time worth? And I see this all the time where people don't think about this. So let's say you think you're worth $100,000 a year, okay? So that comes out to be like roughly $50 an hour. So don't work for less than you're worth, right? It seems obvious, but people don't think about it. So if a website's making $1,000 a month in net, and it takes 10 hours a week, well, if you put in those 10 hours a week, you're making $25 an hour. Doesn't make sense if you're worth 50. You could hire somebody to go and work for $10 an hour, $15 an hour, but then all of a sudden now your profit margin is significantly lower. So when you're valuing the company, you need to make sure you account for that labor cost. So if the same website or some other website's making $10,000 a month, requires the same amount of time, well, now you're valuing your time at $250 an hour, right? So think about that. So do you want a job or an investment? Okay. Let's say a site's making $3,000 a month pure profit. They're willing to sell it to you for 6 times or 6 months worth of the net revenue. Sounds like a great deal, right? Like $18,000 for something that's making $3,000 a month. But then think about what are the real costs in terms of your time. So if you had to put in 40 hours a week, all of a sudden you just bought yourself a job, and it's really taking $8,000 worth of your time, and your job is now paying you $18.75 an hour, which you thought was a really great deal, but it turns out it isn't, because when you take into account your time. So when you're going to invest, you got to think about your time and then your capital. So you're going to invest a bunch of capital in something, and there's no shortage of places to invest money. You can get a CD, a bond, anything. And what determines the level of return you get? Typically it's risk, right? The higher the risk, the greater the possible return. The lower the risk, like a CD, there's like no risk in that, right? So think about when you're investing your money, the level of risk and how much you need to get on your capital return to make it worth that risk. So let's just, so what size deal makes sense when you put all these type of things together? Okay, so let's say you invest $100,000 and you want a 25% return versus $500,000 with a 25% return. So $100,000, you're going to get $25K per year that it needs to throw off in order to account for a 25% return on your 100 grand. 500,000, 125. Now you have to put in how much your time is worth and how much time you're going to spend. So if you were going to put in 40 hours a month, right, only 10 hours a week, times a year, that means you have to account for $24 extra $1,000 worth of your time in order for this to make sense. Now, when you get through the numbers, it really means you need a 49% return, risk and time adjusted, for your investment. Whereas when you have like a $500,000 deal, all of a sudden you only need a 29.8% return, right? So the larger the deal, the less impact your time in the deal reflects on the return you're going to get. Okay, so you want to do what's ever comfortable for you, but the larger the deal, the less your time is important. And also, when you're putting in that time, right? If I put in a time on something that's making 100 grand, where I put in time that's making $1 million, I'm leveraging my time, and that $1 million site, whatever I do, is going to have a higher return on my time that I put in when I make improvements and things like that. So is the investment worth the risk, right? How much competition is there? What are the barrier to entries? I've purchased a $1 million site where there wasn't a ton of competition in it. We go and we start, ramping up, and all of a sudden, right when we buy, 2 other people just move into the market and start dominating, where we were like ranking number 1 for everything, and all of a sudden we get pushed down to like 3 to 5. Well, pretty sure everybody knows what happens, when you get moved from 1 to 5, like it crushes your traffic. So you have to think about, when you buy something, what would it cost to what would it cost to just rebuild this whole thing and start from scratch versus how much you're paying for it, and then what are the barriers to entry, right? Is it difficult to get into that same market? Because if it's not difficult, what's to stop other people from coming in and eating your lunch? Are there any critical employees? It's really important. We bought companies where there was a critical employee. They swore they're going to stick around. Unfortunately, we didn't get like a contract with them. And 2 months later, they're like, peace, I'm out. Like, that sucks really, really bad when a critical employee leaves on something you bought. We replace them, but it's a major, major headache. Does the business rely on any outside sources? Okay, so if it's an e-commerce, is there a relationship between the old owner and the wherever you're sourcing your products from that you might not be able to get? Because if you can't get that same relationship and those same prices on that product, well, when you take over, all of a sudden your margins are thinner, and the numbers don't necessarily work out the same. Does the business exploit something? So are they doing some little SEO tactic that is getting a bunch of traffic, or doing something on Facebook that everybody hasn't caught on to yet, or doing some weird thing that's driving their sales, but is only a matter of time before either other people catch on, or Google does an update, or any of these things, and all of a sudden that exploit gets plugged? You got to be careful with those type of things. What kind of SEO has been done? Are they doing a bunch of black hat stuff? Are they building really crappy private blog networks to it? What happens when Google does an update all of a sudden and poof, everything's gone? Do they own a private blog network where they're linking to the stuff and then going to sell it to you, and as soon as you buy it, they pull all those links away, and now what happens to your traffic? Potentially it just drops off a cliff. Are there any pending changes in the law, right? Are you doing something that's like in the gray that today's okay, but maybe Congress or whoever passes some sort of law and outlaws what you're doing? It's a lot of risk. Is it business seasonal? Are you is like maybe Halloween, right? It's maybe a couple months of the year where you're going to get all this business. And it's not that seasonal businesses are bad. It's that if you have everything that's so consolidated into just a few months, doing any kind of testing for like conversion rate optimization, it starts to get really tricky. And you have to be prepared for that. Whereas if a business is spread out across the year a little more, you have a lot more room to do testing and things of that nature. So what is the traffic mix, right? Organic, paid, social, all this stuff. You want to make sure you have some sort of a mix of traffic. We were looking at a site that was generating 1/3 of their business from Amazon, and we were doing some stuff on Amazon, and all of a sudden, Amazon's changed some rules, and we got the email because we were selling stuff. But what the effect was going to be was the business we were looking at, that 1/3 of their business was gone. Now, what if that had been 100% of the business? You know, like overnight, your money is gone. Like your traffic source or your revenue source is gone. So you don't want to get something that's strictly focused on one source. You want to try to spread it out. And losing 1/3 of your business would suck. Luckily, we saw it before we bought. But imagine just losing 100%. So some basic due diligence tools. The top one, Centurica. That's a due diligence service. I have nothing to do with them. But if you really don't know what you're doing, and you just want like to stand on somebody else's shoulders, it's relatively cheap. You pay them, they do a bunch of due diligence. You just still do your own due diligence, but it'll give you like a starting place. SpyFu, you can download these slides. I'll leave it up for a second since some people are taking pictures, but just download these. I've got a bunch of pages of tools. Screaming Frog's really good. I've discovered a lot of problems on sites that I've got with Screaming Frog just running the crawler, and it's like, whoa, I didn't know we had that many 404s. So some more tools, like sameid.net, the domain tools, that stuff's good for sniffing out. If somebody's selling you a business and they've got 3 others doing the same thing, you can sometimes sniff it out like that. Maybe they're running AdSense across their entire network of all their sites with the same AdSense ID. You can look it up and see each of their sites that have that AdSense code on it and see what else they're doing. You can look at domain tools, and if they've got all their stuff on a dedicated server, you can just go through the entire IP block one at a time and just see what else is on that, in that same C block and figure out what else they've got going on. It also helps you to find some domains sometimes that they haven't told you about that might be in the same niche. Archive.org, it's great for looking up what the site used to be about. So if you're buying something for like a blog network or something, you can see what it used to look like. A bunch of more tools. So Google Trends, if you're looking at buying a site, type in the main keyword for that and look at how it's going. I've been I purchased a site where it's like trending up on Google Trends, and we make the acquisition, and like the next day it's like do. That sucks. But maybe it's already taken that turn, and you look at it and you say, okay, it's already made the turn down. Now you have to readjust your valuation on the business to reflect that negative trend line. So here's an example of a site that got hit by Penguin, right? So look how and see how the site's done in the past. This is SpyFu, and see like how they were doing with other keywords, and then all of a sudden, boom, everything got hit. Well, clearly this site was doing something wrong, or Google just didn't like what they were doing. So is that a site you want to purchase? Maybe, maybe not. If you know how to do Penguin recovery, wow, that's a ton of opportunity, right? If they went from 100,000 uniques to 10,000 uniques overnight because all their stuff dropped off, and you know how to fix that, that's some potential right there to make some good revenue. How did the site even start ranking, right? This is the use of a private blog network, and you can see all of a sudden they weren't ranking for anything, and all of a sudden they're ranking for everything, top 10. Like, that's dangerous, right? If it just all of a sudden came out of nowhere. You want something that's a more gradual increase with keywords adding here and there. Some additional due diligence. If you're looking on like a website like Flippa, the auction site, you want to read comments from other prospective buyers. People will call people out on doing just crazy stuff, and they're trying to hide something or do that. Like, read what other people are asking so that you can figure out like why they're asking this and what they're asking. Research the seller, not just the company. If you're spending some good money, do a background check on the seller. Figure out if they actually own a home, like all of these different things, just so you can get a sense for that person and if it's likely that they're going to try and scam you. Ask to add them to your Google Analytics account. Ask about potential revenue streams, things you might think about trying. And this is one of those things where you have to be a little careful because you don't want to give away everything you're going to do to the person because you don't want them to say, wow, that's a really good idea. I don't want to sell it anymore. Let me just go do these things. So, it's like a balancing act of what you want to ask. But sometimes you may be thinking you're going to do something and they've already tried it and it didn't work, right? You want to verify all the claims with documentations, tax returns, bank statements, merchant account statements, PayPal statement. There's like everything. You want to verify as much as you can. Ask about anomalies, obviously. Ask about the skills and time required to operate this site. Is it going to be above your pay grade where you're not going to be able to do the things? Ask, all right? And then make sure that everything adds up. There's no shortage of sites that are for sale, so make sure that you're fully comfortable, your gut tells you it's okay. Listen to your gut. If it says something's not quite right, then just walk away. Don't risk it. Create a plan for when you're going to purchase the site. What's the migration going to look like? Who, what, and when, as far as operations, expansion, optimization, who, what, when. Figure these things out before you make the purchase. That way you can hit the ground running when you do make that purchase. So how to transfer the site, right? Again, communication is key. One of the companies that I bought that was a 7-figure deal, our contract, I think, was either 120 pages or 160 pages. Like ridiculous contract. But even with that huge contract where you think you've covered like everything, all of a sudden things come up and it's like, well, who's right on this? And it's not really in the contract, so then we have to try to like negotiate still about, well, is this okay? Is this not okay with the old seller? One of the things I like to do when I do purchase is I like to kind of keep the old seller in, let them get like 10% of the new company. That way still has somewhat of a vested interest in the company, making sure it does well. Also like to see if I can get them to hold a note on the company. So if I give them like half of the money in cash and get them hold a note for the other half, like now they're vested in that company significantly because they want it to do well because they still want to get paid. So what is your pain point on a site? If you're buying $1 million site versus a $1,000 site, totally different pain points. $1 million site, maybe you have a 160, 120 page contract. A $1,000 site, maybe a page or two contract, right? You're not going to go and spend 10 grand in legal fees to have all these contracts, written up to buy a $1,000 site. And when you buy a $1,000 site, you have to just, there's always a risk. Am I going to get scammed here? And you just have to know where your pain point is and how much you need from them as far as contracts and things. So let's see. How are you going to send the money to them? Escrow, PayPal, right? If you're sending the money first before you get anything, you want to lock it up like in an escrow or a PayPal type thing. But with PayPal, you can get scammed. I've gotten scammed on PayPal where I was buying a site. It was like 60 grand. I sent the guy a $5,000 deposit. It disappears. Great, I can get my money back, right? So I do a chargeback. Well, with PayPal, and I'm not sure if it still does this 100%, but it used to be where there's like a 30-day window that once you click chargeback, there's 30 days, and then you have to click again that yes, I want to confirm that this is a chargeback. Well, a couple days go by, the guy returns. Oh, okay, hey, he's in a different country, his internet was out. Oh, my grandma was sick or something, I'm sorry, everything's cool. All right, so we keep moving forward. Well, he draws it out past that 30 days and then disappears again. I contact PayPal on like day 32. They're like, sorry, it's outside of the window, your money's gone. That sucks. If you're gonna pay cash, check, wire transfer, Western Union, right? Either you have to really trust the person or you gotta get the stuff up front because once you send that money, you are not getting it back. Litigation is extremely expensive. So where to buy sites from? Depending on the size of the site, if you're buying stuff that's like maybe 50, 100, million and up, you want to use a broker. Here's a list of some brokers. If you are buying stuff that's in the smaller range, maybe you're going to use something, wait till everybody gets their picture. Again, you can download these slides. All right, so if you're buying, something that's like 1,000, 500, 10 grand, maybe use like a Flippa. People sell on eBay. I probably wouldn't go that route. There's marketplaces that sell both online and offline businesses like BizBuySell, BizQuest. Then there's random stuff. I'm part of a mastermind group, and there's another thing that's called Rhodium Weekend. It was, I think, in October or November of last year, and it was like 85 to 100 people that get together that just buy and sell businesses. And just kind of sharing information all about this. Really high-level people doing some really cool stuff. It's called rhodiumweekend.com. And it's, I guess, Internet Investment Summit. It used to be Internet Investment Summit, and it changed to Rhodium Weekend. Networking. Maybe you have an accountant who, he looks at hundreds of businesses, right, or she. Maybe you contact them, ask them if they know anybody who's been grinding it out and is just totally over their business and wants to sell. Maybe you just contact site owners that you see something that's maybe synergistic to your business. Pick up the phone. Like, maybe you could send an email. That'd be a first step. If they don't respond, like, just pick up the phone and call them. People are so afraid to call people. Craigslist, forums, you can find some stuff. Pick the right broker. Okay, really important. I was looking at a site, and it was $23,000. And the guy sends me some information. It's horribly put together. And this is a broker that sends it to me. So I asked him, I was like, listen, can you send me like a clean P&L and just clarify some of these numbers? And his response is, this is a bargain basement sale, not a $600,000 acquisition. So unfortunately, that means that we have more potential buyers and less available time to entertain such in-depth questions, which certainly do feel like competitive research versus due diligence. This is a quick sale, and we have other interested people. Currently, you do not even have an offer on the table. Like, I haven't looked at a P&L, and he wants me to put an offer on the table. It's just ridiculous. Like, this guy clearly thinks his time is worth way too much to be selling a $23,000 site. So, and it doesn't mean that this person's bad, right? If they're used to dealing with $600,000 businesses, maybe they value their time at $250 an hour. Whereas somebody who's used to selling $23,000 sites values their site at $25 an hour, right? It doesn't mean that you're getting a whole lot. The services could be fairly similar, but just if you're selling a small site, pick a broker who's going to put the time in to investigate all potential sales, right? And not say, oh, you're wasting my time by not even putting in an offer without seeing a P&L. Like, I just think that's crazy. Here's just some extra bonus tools that I threw in. Kind of more about running businesses. So Hubstaff's great, all these things. So that's my presentation. Any questions? I ripped through it. They're probably somewhere Affiliate Summit. They're going to have them published. I'm not sure. Questions? Go ahead. I don't want to say the guy's name. We're being recorded. Go ahead. Yeah, most people sell websites between, so like not like $1,000 website, we're going to talk about bigger sites, right? So most people are selling decent sized websites, get 2 to 3.5x net, right? So if the company's throwing off $100,000, they're going to get between $200,000 and $350,000 profit, off the pro. By year. So the website earns $100,000 a year. Typically, it's going to be 2.5 to 3.5 times that, or 2 to 3.5 times that, depending on the work level and things like that. People really want like automated businesses; they'll pay up for that. Again, a lot of people who are selling the company don't put in there how much time they're putting in as far as when they're valuing it. So it's one of those things where it's going to, It's increased slightly. 5 years ago, you could probably get 6 months a year, but typically that's on small stuff. And so I would say it's gone up a little bit over the last on big deals. Questions? I typically don't recommend that. The reason I'm sorry. She asked about flipping websites. So advice for like buying something that's not really generating revenue and then trying to build it up to generate revenue. Typically when you see deals like that, it's somebody who like bought a domain name and put together a little crappy site and like they're trying to sell that as like a business opportunity. Typically that's not the way to go. Like the reason for buying a website from somebody is, what is it? It's like 8 out of 10 businesses fail within the first X number of years, and you're trying to stand on somebody else's shoulders who's already succeeded in business and then ramp that business up. You're taking a lot of the risk out when you buy something that's already successful rather than doing like a startup of your own. I would say when you buy stuff and you're trying to flip it, on the smaller level, it's almost like doing a startup where you could have hired like a designer and somebody installed a WordPress plugin and stuff like that. If you're trying to buy and flip like $100,000 website, That's all about just conversion rate optimization, SEO, trying to get more traffic, things like that. Go ahead.
How do you find and then how do you evaluate a good website broker?
Good website broker? Just from their reputations. There's certain people that you don't want to deal with. The people on the list that I gave of brokers, those guys are probably pretty good, at least the top few.
Can you flip back to this?
Sure. I'm not saying that people that aren't on this aren't good. I'm just saying these are guys that I have personal relationships with, the top half that are pretty good guys.
Kind of a follow-up on the question from before, but how much of a premium do buyers pay just for like a really great domain name?
So what's the premium on great domain names? I would say 0. When you're buying a business, you're buying it based on cash flow typically and not for the domain name. I get people all the time, oh, I got these great domain names. It's not getting any traffic, and it's like, it's not worth anything to me. I'm buying because I'm buying something that's generating revenue. Domains I think are a dime a dozen, unless you get some if you're buying cd.com or something like that, then it's great. But, with all these new TLDs and stuff, I'm not going anywhere near them.
Is there everything for cash flow? Are there any finance options or any companies like the brokers that are finances? It's some of our different sites.
Yeah, I mean, you can actually do like SBA loans on them. I don't know of anybody who like straight up just finances these type of deals. I'm sure there's somebody out there. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I do know you can do like SBA stuff. All right, guys. One last question? We got time. All right. Well, that's our time. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you.